Alright, once again we gotta enter the cage, and we're talking about the final film in the Holy Trinity of Nicolas Cage, The Rock. Starring Nicolas Cage, Sean Connery, Ed Harris, and is directed by dun 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 Michael Bay. Let me tell you something right off the bat. This is one of the good Michael Bay movies. This came out the year after Bad Boys, which in my opinion could be one of his best. If not the best. This is peak Michael Bay. So, I'll try to do a couple more Michael Bay movies to kind of get, because I think I'm kind of figuring out what I'm gonna do for my top 5 series I'm gonna do, and I need a first one. I think a good challenge would be top 5 good Michael Bay movies. So, to figure out which are the good ones. I've seen a lot of bad ones, a few bad ones, but this is The Rock, not that Rock. If you smell, not that Rock. And so it tells the story of Frank Hummel, who worked for a secret army operation, military operation, and he gets his troops, and he takes over Alcatraz, taking all the tourists there hostage, and plans on releasing the deadly gas. If the U.S. government doesn't pay for to the families of the people who died during those operations. Basically what it is. First scene in this film has him visiting his wife's grave, so yeah, he's up to something. So, yes. Before I get into the plot of this film, I can say there is a lot of star power in this film, even for actors who weren't even big stars yet. Who weren't even today you might not even know them. So, let's name off the cast of this, shall we? Nicolas Cage, Sean Connery, Ed Harris, William Forsythe, Vanessa Marcel, Michael Biehn, Tony Todd, John C. McGinley, Bokeem Woodbine, who else? Tuco from Breaking Bad. I don't remember the actor's name. Michael Chavez, something like that. Claire Forlani, Leo McGarry from The West Wing. The guy who played Leo McGarry from The West Wing. He's in this. There's just a lot of actors from the time in this movie. It is fantastic how many actors I recognize in this movie. So, this movie is peak Michael Bay. I think, for Michael Bay, his holy trinity was Bad Boys, The Rock, and Armageddon. After that, that kind of went a little wonky, but for me, those are his 3 good movies, and I've seen the other 2. It's my first time watching this, and I can tell you, this is definitely one of the good Michael Bay movies. I dreaded it too. I'm like, oh, this is as soon as it said directed by Michael Bay, I'm like, oh, this could be like Bad Boys Michael Bay. And it is. It's first Bad Boys Michael Bay, not Bad Boys 2 Michael Bay. I'm sorry for those who like Bad Boys 2. That's fine. I don't like that movie at all. I think it's pure Michael Bay cheesiness that just doesn't work for me. But overall, this film is better. One thing that got me, watching this from the beginning, once Nicolas Cage is introduced, one thing that got me was he's not playing a Nicolas Cage type character. He's very subdued. He doesn't cuss. He doesn't smoke. Doesn't be seen drinking on there. He gets a little weird and wacky sometimes, especially towards the end of the film. Most of the time, he's subdued. He's like not Nicolas Cage, basically. He plays a chemical engineer, a chemical expert for the FBI, named Stanley, which is not a Nicolas Cage name. Stanley Goodspeed. Who saw the name Stanley Goodspeed in the character list and said, "I'm gonna get Nicolas Cage for that movie, for that role"? Michael Bay. That's who. Jeff Goldblum. Then once they said his name was Stanley Goodspeed and stuff, I was trying to think, who could be better at playing this role than Nicolas Cage? Jeff Goldblum. I think this could have been a good Jeff Goldblum role. But, 96, he was fighting aliens, so what are you going to do? And for the most part, Nicolas Cage plays it pretty good. I have to critique a sex scene, and I'm sorry I have to do this, but I do. There are certain ways you do sex scenes, okay? If you're going to have a sex scene in a movie, show some nudity. Otherwise, don't do the sex scene. It makes no sense when you do sex scenes. There are two examples of badly done sex scenes. One is where you have the characters, like you have the guy laying on top of the girl, but she's got a sheet covering her. No one has sex like that. No one does. If you're not going to show anything, don't put a sex scene in a movie. Likewise with this one. He's having sex with Vanessa Marcel's character, right? She's still in her bra, and she's got, it covered in there. Let me tell you from experience, women don't like having sex with their clothes on, alright? I was dating a woman once, 10 years ago. Before. It's the mother of my child, right? And we started to get going, and I'm not going to get explicit, but at a certain point, she's like, I have to take this off. It's too uncomfortable. And that's my point, is that no woman would have sex with their clothes still on. It's not comfortable. It just doesn't work. And in movies, they do that because the actresses don't want to have nudity in it. A big example is Friday the 13th Part 6, Jason Lives. The actress who played Nikki had a no nudity clause in her contract. So they instead of just foregoing the sex scene entirely, they shot her fully clothed having sex with Court. It makes no sense to me. If you're not going to have nudity in your sex scene, then don't do the sex scene. It's not practical. It's not realistic. Don't do it. I'm not pissed that there wasn't any nudity. I'm pissed is that they did a sex scene without nudity and it makes no sense. Okay? I love me some nudity, but come on. So the story here is that in order to get into Alcatraz, they need someone who got out, and so they go and they free John Mason, played by Sean Connery, who is former SAS and MI6 agent, and some people have pointed out, this is like a spiritual James Bond sequel. And you could, I have complaints about Connery, though. It's not his acting side. He is fantastic in this film when it comes to the acting. But when he starts to get physical, and it's not that he can't do it. I've seen him do it in James Bond stuff. He was in his 60s at this point. He was a little bit over that hill. And I just think maybe he didn't have that physical, presence anymore like he used to. I'm just saying. But yes, and he's brought in. I also want to talk about his appearance here. When they first show him, he's got long, scraggly hair, bushy beard, and he looks like a badass motherfucker being taken with the freaking chains. He looks badass. But then they give him a haircut and a bit of a shave, and he looks like old white dude for the rest of the film. And it's just like, how could he look so badass when he comes in with the scraggly hair and his bushy beard, bushy-ish beard, and now all of a sudden he's got a little bit of a shave and a haircut, and now he's old man Sean. It's just like, no, it just doesn't work for me, I guess. Another thing is we have to have the stereotypical guy who has a grudge against the guy. Apparently, Leo McGarry, from the West Wing. I forgot the character's name here, but he has a grudge against Connery for incident that happened when it comes about some microfilm that contains the government's secrets, like Roswell, New Mexico, and the Kennedy assassination. They hid and won't tell or anyone, where he put it. Don't tell anyone where he put it, right? And that's his big thing. They offer him freedom, and he signs the thing. But then when they're okay, I'll take this to wherever it needs to go. And then he's like, no, I'll take that. Then when Gary does, and he just rips it. And he's like, what? Like they offered this guy freedom for his service, and then, and when he tells him, he tore it up. Of course he did. So he knew that he wasn't going to be able to go free. For the most part, this movie is paced real well. It hits the story points. This movie is just a little over 2 hours long. It's paced well, but I feel like you could have taken out a couple scenes. In particular, one scene in particular, where he escapes from the government, where Sean Connery's character escapes from the government to go find his daughter, which amounts to nothing. He finds his daughter, they have a talk, Cage shows up, and a few minutes later, the government shows up to take him away. The daughter is never seen, no mention again, so I don't understand why it's in the film. To be honest, I think you take that scene out, and maybe, I don't know, the scene where Cage calls his girlfriend and tells her not to come to San Francisco, that little part, maybe it's not necessary, as she still shows up in San Francisco. I don't know. There's just, a couple things you could cut some things to make it an hour and a half. It just has to be 2 hours. No, but the pacing is still good. And let's talk about what Michael Bay does the best, the action scenes. And when you get the action scenes, you get this action scene, which, again, you could take this action scene out and you wouldn't need it, because all it amounts to is them chasing him to where he finds his daughter, and then they go away. So you take that action scene out, and it shortens the movie by a good 5 to 10 minutes, plus the scene with his daughter is another 5. So that's 20 minutes, 15 minutes. You could take out and make it a little bit shorter, and they don't really go anywhere. The whole action scene doesn't go anywhere because it just leads to the scene with the daughter, which also doesn't go anywhere because it doesn't carry on to anything else in the film. Just saying. And so we get to the end, and we get a twist that Hummel, Ed Harris's character, was never going to actually detonate the missiles on the hostages. This pisses off the rest of his people, although I don't understand why, because they're just following his orders. He just wants the money, he doesn't want to hurt anyone. And so he ends up dead, and then there's some guy who's not even, I don't know who the actor is, who's left, and then the government is going to launch jets with missiles to fire. Cage comes out, and this is typical Michael Bay, right? This is total Michael Bay cheesiness. He lights 2 flares, comes out in slow motion, and Nicolas cages it up there for a minute, but he still fired the payload because it wasn't quick enough to say stop. And Cage gets blown into the water, but Connery saves him, and then as a thank you, Cage tells the government, or the FBI, that Connery died and was vaporized by the missiles. And Connery gives Cage a little note that gives him a location in Kansas City. Which Kansas City, I don't know. And he finds the microfilm, and the last line of the film is, you want to know who killed JFK? He finds out he married. Another thing. Doesn't really go anywhere, but it connects to the end of the film, so I guess it does. Is that The girlfriend says she's pregnant, right? And then he has to comment whether or not he wants to marry her. At the end of the film, they're married because they got the cans on the back of the car and everything. And they're driving away as he goes, You want to know who killed JFK? So, yeah, I don't know. I was hoping I could give this Holy Trinity a perfect score. But the fact of the matter is, I just didn't like this film as much as the other two. Some people say this is the best of those three. I still say it's Con Air. But I'm going to have to give this a 9 out of 10 at least. It's a good film. There's some good action scenes, some good acting. But unlike the other two movies, I can't overlook some of the stuff in this film. They could have made it shorter. They could have cut some things out. Connery could have had a stunt double that did his fighting maneuvers for him if they weren't sure he could do it. Yeah, for me, I just can't overlook them like I did the other two. And I'm not as well versed with this film as the other two. I love those other two films. This is my first watch. And if you want to watch it yourself, it's on YouTube. Just search The Rock full movie. It's on there. It's over 2 hours. You might have to turn up the volume a little bit. It's a little low, but it's a fun watch for sure. So it gets a 9 out of 10 from me. You, what do you think of The Rock? Let me know in the comments below. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Thanks for watching. I've been Scotty, and I'll see you in the next one, which will be my last Nicolas Cage movie I'm doing for this weekend, I guess. I'm finally going to look at Mandy. I'm finally going to give it a watch, so we'll see what that's like. Alright? See ya.